Before anything else, pause for a moment and listen. Not with your ears, but with your heart. There are times when God allows a knowing to rise within you that you didn't ask for and can't fully explain. A quiet awareness, a gentle stirring, a sense that someone, somewhere, has been carrying your name in their thoughts without ever speaking it out loud. And when that realization comes, it doesn't feel dramatic. It feels weighty. It makes you reflective. It makes you still. If you felt that lately, you're not imagining it, and you're not being teased by emotion. God does not awaken awareness without purpose. This message is for the one who has been walking carefully with God, guarding their heart, doing the inner work, and yet feeling a subtle shift they can't quite define. You haven't been chasing attention. You haven't been asking for signs, yet something in you knows that a connection is forming quietly, responsibly, under God's watchful eye. And instead of excitement, what you feel is reverence, because you sense this is not ordinary. You may have wondered why God would allow you to sense this without giving you clarity, why He would let awareness come without instruction. But sometimes God speaks not to move you forward, but to steady you where you are. Sometimes He confirms not to awaken desire, but to deepen trust. This is not about romance alone. This is about timing, obedience, and the way God protects what matters. This is about learning how to carry revelation without rushing outcome, how to remain grounded when curiosity tries to take over, how to stay faithful in the waiting without turning anticipation into anxiety. If you are here, it's because God trusts you with this knowledge. He knows you won't misuse it. He knows you won't force what He is still forming. And He knows your heart is mature enough to hold silence without losing peace. So breathe. Settle your thoughts. Release the urge to figure everything out. What you are sensing is real, but it is also sacred. And God who confirmed it is the same God who will reveal it in His perfect time. And the secret place is where God does His most precise work. What happens in secret is never accidental. It is intentional, deliberate, and protected. God does not expose what He has not yet secured. He does not reveal what He has not yet refined. And that is why this connection has remained hidden. Not because it lacks clarity, but because it carries weight. You must understand this. Secrecy does not mean uncertainty. Sometimes secrecy is proof of seriousness. God hides precious things. He covers what He values. And if someone is thinking about you quietly, thoughtfully, prayerfully, it means God is dealing with them responsibly. They are not rushing their emotions. They are not acting out of impulse. They are allowing God to govern their thoughts before they ever approach you. That alone tells you this is not shallow. You didn't ask for this awareness. It found you. And God allowed it because He needed you to know you are not misreading the season you are in. You've been feeling a shift, not dramatic, not loud, but subtle. A sense that something is aligning, that something is being positioned beyond your sight. And while nothing has changed outwardly, something has changed inwardly. That's how God moves. He speaks to the spirit before He moves the environment. He prepares the heart before He opens the door. And right now He is training you to trust Him with what you cannot touch yet. Because trust is tested most when confirmation comes without permission to act. This is where maturity is proven. Can you receive confirmation without forcing outcome? Can you hold awareness without creating expectation? Can you stay surrendered without trying to control the narrative? God is watching how you steward this knowledge. If you chase it, you'll rush it. If you idolize it, you'll distort it. If you fear it, you'll resist it. But if you trust God with it, you'll protect it. And protection is your assignment right now. Someone is thinking about you because God has been allowing them to see what others overlooked. Your consistency, your integrity, your quiet strength, your faith when things didn't make sense. You didn't advertise your growth, but God did. And God does not highlight people to the wrong hearts. This person has noticed how you carry yourself when no one is watching. How you remain faithful without needing validation. How you don't chase attention. How you walk with God sincerely not performatively. And that kind of depth draws those who are also being refined, because shallow hearts are intimidated by depth. Only those who are growing can recognize growth. But again, recognition does not mean release. God often allows recognition long before connection, so that admiration can be purified of selfish desire, so that attraction can mature into respect, so that interest can be filtered through prayer instead of impulse. And if you're honest, you wouldn't want it any other way. You've already lived through rushed connections. You've experienced what happens when emotions lead and God follows instead of the other way around. You've learned the cost of misalignment, the pain of premature attachment, the confusion of unclear intentions. God remembers that, even if you try to forget it. So now He moves differently, slower, quieter, deeper. Someone is thinking about you, but they are not allowed to touch yet because God is still establishing boundaries. And boundaries are not barriers, they are safeguards. God safeguards hearts before He joins them. And you too are being prepared. God is checking your posture, your humility, your dependence on Him, making sure you don't build fantasies where He only intended faith, making sure you don't read ahead of the chapter He's still writing, because what God is orchestrating is not emotional entertainment. It's purposeful connection. And purpose requires patience. Some of you needed this confirmation because you were beginning to question whether your season of obedience was worth it. You were wondering if anyone noticed your faithfulness, if anyone valued your restraint, if anyone saw the depth you've been cultivating. God answered that quietly, yes. But He also answered wisely, not yet, because recognition without readiness creates frustration, and God does not frustrate His children unnecessarily. He only allows enough tension to grow capacity. Right now, the tension you feel is not desire. It's anticipation under discipline. It's hope restrained by wisdom. And that is a holy tension. You are learning how to hold promise without possession, how to trust alignment without proof. How to stay anchored even when curiosity wants answers. This season is stretching your faith, not in God's ability, but in His timing. And timing is everything. A connection revealed too early becomes pressure. A conversation started too soon becomes confusion. A door opened prematurely becomes a distraction. So God keeps it hidden. He lets thoughts mature. He lets intentions settle. He lets prayer replace imagination. Because when God finally speaks openly, there will be no need for guessing. And you won't need to ask, is this God? You won't need to decode signals. You won't need to second-guess motives. Clarity will come cleanly. Until then, God is asking you to remain exactly where you are. Grounded, prayerful, focused on Him, not on the possibility. Because the moment possibility becomes your focus, peace begins to fade. And peace is your confirmation. If this awareness came with anxiety, it wouldn't be God. If it came with obsession, it wouldn't be God. If it came with pressure, it wouldn't be God, but it came with stillness, with assurance, with a quiet knowing that didn't demand movement. That's how God confirms without disrupting. Someone is thinking about you in secret, but God is shaping both of you openly, just not publicly. And what God shapes privately will be stable when exposed. You don't need to search for signs. You don't need to replay conversations. You don't need to analyze patterns. God is not playing games with you. When He wants action, He will speak clearly. Until then, stay faithful to your current assignment. Stay obedient in your current season. Stay rooted in your walk with God, because nothing delays destiny faster than distractio. Then, this is not the season to lean forward. This is the season to stand firm. God confirmed this not to awaken desire, but to strengthen trust, to remind you that heaven sees, heaven knows, and heaven is involved, even when everything feels quiet. And as long as it remains quiet, it remains protected. Because what God is preparing between two hearts must be strong enough to survive exposure, opinion, pressure, and responsibility. And that strength is being formed now in silence. And silence, when governed by God, is never empty. It is full of preparation. And in that preparation, God is also teaching you something deeply personal about yourself. He is revealing what still rises in you when anticipation knocks. He is exposing whether your joy is anchored in Him or quietly attached to outcomes you cannot yet see. This is not punishment. This is refinement. God refines what He intends to use, and He does not rush refinement because rush gold is fragile. You may not realize it, but the restraint you are practicing right now is shaping your character more than any visible breakthrough ever could. You are learning how to wait without losing wonder, how to remain hopeful without becoming needy, how to trust God's orchestration without trying to manage His process. These lessons are subtle, but they are essential. They are forming a foundation that can carry weight later, because when God finally allows what is hidden to become visible, it will carry responsibility, and responsibility requires stability. That is why God is working on your emotional maturity, teaching you not to confuse attention with affection, not to confuse curiosity with commitment, not to confuse information with completion. He is sharpening your discernment so that when the moment comes, you will move wisely, not emotionally. Some seasons feel quiet not because nothing is happening, but because God is reducing noise. He is removing distractions that once shaped your decisions. He is quieting the voices that influenced you before you learned to hear His clearly. And in that quiet, your sensitivity to Him is increasing. You are noticing things you once ignored. You are questioning patterns you once accepted. You are slowing down where you once rushed. That is growth. And that growth is attractive to God first and then to the right people. The person thinking about you is not drawn to what you pretend to be. They are drawn to who you are becoming. They sense the depth forming in you, even if they cannot fully explain it. And God is using that awareness to teach them patience as well, to teach them honor, to teach them how to approach what matters with reverence instead of entitlement. Because anything that comes from God must be approached God's way, and God's way always protects dignity. You may wonder why God would allow you to sense this without giving you clarity, why He would stir awareness without instruction. But understand this, God does not always reveal information to prompt action. Sometimes He reveals information to prompt trust. This awareness is not an invitation to move. It is an invitation to rest in the knowledge that you are not forgotten, to rest in the assurance that your obedience has not gone unnoticed, to rest in the truth that God is aligning things beyond your reach. And rest is not passivity. Rest is confidence without control. You are learning how to let God handle what you cannot manage, how to release outcomes without releasing hope, how to believe without demanding timelines. That kind of faith is rare, and rare faith is valuable. God often allows us to sense future connections, not to excite us, but to heal us, to show us that not every meaningful thing has to arrive through chaos. Not every connection has to be born from confusion. Not every interest has to be rushed to be real. This time, God is doing it clean. No manipulation, no mixed signals, no emotional pressure. Just alignment forming quietly under His supervision. And if you're honest, this quiet feels unfamiliar. You're used to emotional highs and lows. You're used to intensity. You're used to uncertainty disguised as passion. But God is showing you a different way, one marked by peace, order, and clarity. It may feel less dramatic, but it is far more secure. Someone is thinking about you, yes. But more importantly, God is thinking about you. He is thinking about your future, your peace, your calling, your purpose. And He is making sure that nothing He introduces into your life interferes with what He placed inside you. That's why He's careful. God does not rush connections that carry destiny. He waits until both hearts can handle the weight without losing themselves, until both people can love without idolizing, until both can give without draining, until both can walk together without competing with God's place in their lives. And that preparation cannot be faked. It requires time. Some of you are realizing now that the waiting was never about denial, it was about alignment. God wasn't keeping something from, oh, He was keeping something for you, protecting it from the version of you that wasn't ready yet. And now that you are growing, He allows you to sense what's coming, not to grab it, but to grow into it. This season is teaching you how to handle anticipation with grace, how to hold hope without letting it become obsession, how to remain present without living in what if. Because when the right time comes, God does not want you depleted by waiting. He wants you whole. Wholeness matters. A whole heart can love freely. A whole mind can discern clearly. A whole spirit can trust deeply. God is building wholeness in you, and He is doing the same in the other heart involved. Even if you don't know their journey, even if you don't see their struggles, even if you don't understand their silence, God is dealing with them personally, uniquely, thoroughly, because He does not join unfinished work carelessly. You don't need to worry about being forgotten in their thoughts. God is the one reminding them. You don't need to worry about timing slipping away. God governs time. You don't need to worry about missed opportunities. What God ordains cannot be missed. Rest in that. Rest in the fact that God is intentional, that He sees the full picture, that He knows how to bring things together without damaging what He has built separately. This is not a season of chasing. This is not a season of guessing. This is not a season of forcing conversations or creating moments. This is a season of trust. Trust that God knows how to introduce people at the right time. Trust that He knows how to speak clearly when silence is no longer needed. Trust that what He confirms in secret will be revealed with peace. And until that moment arrives, your assignment remains the same. Stay faithful. Stay grounded. Stay focused on God. Let Him continue shaping you. Let Him continue strengthening you. Let Him continue removing what no longer fits who you are becoming. Because when the time comes, when silence breaks, when clarity replaces mystery, when God opens what He has kept closed, you will not step into it desperate or uncertain. You will step into it ready. And readiness is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush to prove anything. Readiness is calm. It is steady. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are no longer trying to be chosen. You are simply available to what God has already chosen for you. You are beginning to notice that your reactions are changing. Things that once unsettled you no longer have the same power. Questions that once demanded immediate answers are now met with patience. You are no longer anxious to define every feeling or label every possibility. That shift is not accidental. It is the evidence that God is maturing your inner life. Because God never connects two people at the level of their emotions first. He connects them at the level of their purpose. Emotions follow alignment, not the other way around. And when purpose leads, emotions become healthy instead of controlling. This is why God has been guarding your heart so carefully. You may have thought He was withholding something from you, but in truth, He was preserving you. Preserving your peace, preserving your focus, preserving your calling. Because anything that enters your life now must support where God is taking you, not distract you from it. And perhaps for the first time you are beginning to understand that being alone does not mean being lonely. It means being undivided. It means having the space to hear God clearly without competing voices. It means having room to grow without pressure to perform for someone else's approval. That space has been holy. In that space, God has healed wounds you didn't even know were still open. He has corrected patterns you once repeated unconsciously. He has taught you how to love without losing yourself, how to care without overextending, how to hope without desperation. These lessons are priceless, because when someone eventually steps into your life, they will meet a version of you that is whole, not wounded, secure, not searching, grounded, not grasping. And that changes everything. Someone is thinking about you, yes, but they are not thinking about rescuing you. They are not thinking about completing you. They are thinking about walking with you. And that distinction matters. God does not send saviors to His children. He sends companions. Companions who respect boundaries. Companions who honor timing. Companions who recognize God's hand before pursuing their own desires. That kind of connection is rare because it requires restraint. It requires humility. It requires a willingness to wait for God's permission instead of acting on impulse. And God is pleased with that posture. You must understand how deeply God values order. He is not chaotic. He is not impulsive. He is intentional in all his ways. And when he is involved in something, it unfolds with wisdom, not confusion. That is why there is no rush here. What God is preparing is meant to last, not just feel good in the moment. And lasting things are built slowly, layer by layer, decision by decision, prayer by prayer. You may not see progress externally, but internally, something is being fortified. Your discernment is sharper. Your standards are clearer. Your dependence on God is deeper. These are not small things. They are the framework of a stable future. God is teaching you not to romanticize potential, but to value alignment. Not to chase attention, but to recognize intention. Not to be flattered by interest, but to be anchored in truth. And that maturity protects you. There was a time when simply being noticed would have been enough. A time when interest alone would have felt validating. But you are no longer that person. God has elevated your understanding. You now know that attention without purpose is empty, and connection without direction is dangerous. So God waits until intention matches capacity. And while he waits, he works. He works on your patience. He works on your humility. He works on your ability to trust him even when he doesn't explain himself. Because faith that depends on explanations is fragile. But faith that rests in God's character is unshakable. This season is strengthening your faith in ways you will only fully appreciate later. One day you will look back and realize that the silence was one of the greatest gifts God ever gave you. Because in that silence, you learned how to hear him. In that waiting, you learned how to lean on him. In that restraint, you learned how to surrender control. Those lessons will serve you far beyond this moment. And when God finally gives clarity, when he brings what is hidden into the light, it will not disrupt your life. It will complement it. It will not destabilize you. It will strengthen you. Because God does not add things to your life that require you to lose your footing. He adds things that help you stand. So do not fear the quiet. Do not rush the process. Do not question God's timing just because your emotions are eager. Emotions are real, but they are not rulers. God is the ruler of this season, and he is doing this with care. Someone is thinking about you, but more importantly, God is thinking about how to protect both of you from harm. Harm that comes from moving too fast, from assuming too much, from acting without instruction. This is not delay. This is design. Design that considers your past, your present, and your future. Design that takes into account lessons learned and mistakes avoided. Design that honors growth, not just desire. And as long as God is designing, you can rest. Rest in his wisdom. Rest in his goodness. Rest in his ability to bring things together at the right moment without stress or struggle. You are not behind. You are not overlooked. You are not waiting in vain. You are being prepared. And preparation is always worth the time it takes. And preparation often feels like stillness on the outside, while everything is shifting on the inside. It feels like waking up one day and realizing you no longer react the way you used to. You don't chase explanations anymore. You don't need constant reassurance. You don't feel the urge to fill silence with noise. That is not emotional numbness. It is emotional strength being formed. God is teaching you how to be secure without constant affirmation, how to be confident without applause, how to be content without knowing every detail of what's coming next. And that kind of security is not learned quickly. It is built slowly, through moments where you choose trust over control. You may have noticed that God has been simplifying your life, reducing unnecessary connections, quietly removing distractions, narrowing your focus. This is not loss, it is alignment. God often subtracts before he multiplies because cluttered hearts cannot steward clarity, and clarity is coming. But clarity must meet capacity, because clarity without capacity creates overwhelm. God is making sure that when understanding comes, it strengthens you instead of burdening you. Someone is thinking about you, but God is also thinking about how to protect the future version of you. the version of you that will have more responsibility, more influence, more purpose. He is making sure you don't enter that future carrying unresolved emotions or unhealthy expectations. This season is healing you at a deeper level than you realize. God is healing how you attach. He is healing how you interpret silence. He is healing how you respond to uncertainty. Before, silence felt like rejection. Now, silence feels like space. Space to breathe. Space to grow. Space to trust God without panic. That is progress. And it didn't come overnight. It came through surrender. Through moments where you wanted answers but chose faith instead. Through times when you wanted to move ahead but chose to wait on God. Those choices matter. Every time you resisted the urge to rush, something in you grew stronger. Every time you chose prayer over speculation, your discernment sharpened. Every time you trusted God instead of you, our emotions, your spiritual authority increased. God honors restraint. In a world that celebrates impulsiveness, restraint is a rare virtue. And rare virtues attract rare outcomes. You are learning how to hold things loosely, not because they don't matter, but because God matters more. And when God is first, everything else finds its proper place. This is why your peace has remained intact even with awareness, even with curiosity, even with anticipation. There is no chaos in your spirit, no restlessness driving you to act. That peace is not accidental. It is the confirmation that God is involved. Because God never confirms something in a way that disrupts your peace. You are being trained to recognize that peace is not the absence of desire, but the presence of trust. It is knowing that God is in control even when you are not informed. That trust is powerful. It allows God to move freely without resistance. It allows Him to work behind the scenes without interference. It allows Him to orchestrate details you could never arrange yourself, .br. And He is doing just that, because faith that has not been tested has not yet been trusted with weight. And God is not careless with weight. He does not place heavy responsibility on shallow roots. He does not pour deep influence into fragile identity. He does not release lasting purpose into hearts that still need constant reassurance. So He waits, and while He waits, He builds. You are being built from the inside out. .br. That's why this season feels so internal, so emotional, so reflective. You're not just waiting for things to happen around you. You're being confronted with things within you. Old fears you thought were gone. Old doubts you assumed were settled. Old wounds you believed had healed. They surface now not to shame you, but to free you. Because God will not take you into the future carrying unresolved pain from the past. Some of you are learning how to forgive people who will never apologize, how to release resentment without closure, how to move forward without explanation. And that work is exhausting, but it is holy work, because bitterness blocks blessing and unforgiveness poisons progress. God is teaching you how to let go, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Waiting exposes what pressure hides. It reveals where your trust truly lies, whether it's in God's promises or in predictable outcomes, whether it's in His character or in your comfort. And when those things are shaken, you begin to see what your faith is really built on. That discovery can be painful. Because sometimes we realize we trusted God as long as things were moving, as long as doors were opening, as long as prayers were being answered quickly. But when movement stops, faith is tested. And testing is not punishment. It's proof. Proof that your faith can survive without immediate reward. Proof that your obedience is not conditional. Proof that your relationship with God is not transactional. That kind of faith moves heaven, and heaven is paying attention. You may feel like nothing is happening, but decisions are being made. Alignments are shifting. Opportunities are being prepared. Hearts are being positioned. And God is orchestrating things in ways you could never manage on your own. Because destiny involves more than just you. It involves timing, people, circumstances, systems, and moments that converge at the right time. And if even one piece is out of place, the outcome would be compromised. So God waits until everything aligns. And that alignment often takes longer than we want, but never longer than necessary. Some of you are being taught patience not as a concept, but as a lifestyle. Learning how to trust God daily, not just for big breakthroughs, but for small mercies. Learning how to thank Him for provision, even when the promise feels distant. Learning how to worship in the middle, not just at the finish line. And that middle place, the in-between, is where many people give up. Not because they don't believe God can do it, but because they're tired of believing without seeing. But seeing is not the foundation of faith. Trust is. Faith that needs constant evidence is fragile. Faith that rests on God's nature is unshakable. And God is shifting you from fragile faith to firm faith. That shift doesn't feel exciting. It feels stretching. It feels uncomfortable. It feels lonely at times. Because fewer people can walk with you in seasons where nothing makes sense. But God walks with you there, closely, intentionally, personally. He listens to prayers you don't even know how to articulate. He understands sighs that come from deep exhaustion. He sees the moments when you almost quit but chose to stay. And those moments matter more than you know. Because staying when it's hard develops spiritual authority. Authority not given by position but earned through endurance. Authority that comes from knowing God personally, not just knowing about Him. And that authority will matter when you step into future seasons where others look to you for strength, guidance, and wisdom. They won't need someone who has all the answers. They'll need someone who knows how to trust God when answers are absent. That's who you're becoming. You are learning how to walk by faith without emotional highs, how to obey without excitement, how to remain consistent without external validation. And that consistency will carry you farther than motivation ever could. Motivation fades. Discipline remains. Faith that is rooted in discipline, not emotion, survives droughts. And droughts come. Seasons where prayers feel dry, where worship feels heavy, where scripture feels familiar but distant. And those seasons are not signs of spiritual failure, they are signs of maturation. Children need constant affirmation. Adults learn to trust without it. God is treating you like someone He trusts. And that trust is expensive. It costs comfort. It costs clarity. It costs control. But it gives you something far greater in return. Depth of character, depth of faith, depth of discernment, depth of relationship with God that cannot be shaken by circumstances. Some of you are realizing that what you thought was delay was actually protection from misalignment. There were things you wanted that would have taken you off course. People you prayed for who would have drained you. Opportunities you desired that would have distracted you. And God, in His mercy, said no. At the time, it felt like rejection. Now, slowly, it's starting to feel like rescue. Because God does not just answer prayers. He guards destinies. And guarding a destiny sometimes means frustrating your impatience. You are not being punished by waiting. You are being preserved. Preserved from pride. Preserved from burnout. Preserved from compromise. Preserved from becoming something impressive but empty. God is far more concerned with who you are when no one is watching than who you appear to be when everyone is watching. And this season is forming integrity. Integrity that doesn't bend under pressure. Integrity that doesn't chase shortcuts. Integrity that doesn't need applause to stay faithful. That integrity will matter when decisions get harder and stakes get higher. Some of you will one day stand at crossroads where compromise will look profitable, where cutting corners will look tempting, where choosing God will cost you something visible. And in those moments, the strength to choose rightly will come from this waiting season, because waiting trains you to trust God when obedience costs you comfort. And that is not a lesson learned quickly. Right now, you are being taught how to sit with unresolved questions without letting them harden your heart. How to live with uncertainty without losing hope. How to wait without becoming cynical. Cynicism is easy. Hope is costly. And you are choosing hope even when it feels heavy. That choice matters. Every time you choose to pray instead of complain. Every time you choose to trust instead of panic. Every time you choose obedience instead of control. You are building something eternal. Eternal things do not come quickly. They come correctly. And God is not late. He is intentional. There will come a moment at the right time when things begin to move quickly, when doors open faster than you expected, when clarity comes suddenly, when prayers are answered in ways that leave you breathless. And when that moment arrives, you will realize that God was never inactive. He was preparing you to handle the acceleration without losing balance, preparing you to steward the blessing without losing humility, preparing you to walk in purpose without losing dependence on Him. Acceleration without preparation destroys people. God refuses to destroy you, so He waits. And while He waits, He teaches you how to trust Him not just for outcomes, but for timing. Not just for provision, but for process. Not just for miracles, but for maturity. Maturity that says, even if it takes longer, I will still follow. Maturity that says, even if I don't understand, I will still obey. Maturity that says, even if it hurts, I will still trust. That is not weak faith. That is strong faith. And strong faith is forged in waiting. So if you are tired, rest, but do not retreat. If you are discouraged, be honest, but do not disconnect. If you are confused, ask, but do not abandon your faith. Because the God who called you into this season is the same God who will lead you out of it. And until that moment arrives, this waiting will continue to deepen you, refine you, and shape you into someone who can carry what is coming without losing your soul. And what is coming will require. Everything this season is building in you. Conversations are being shaped. Timing is being aligned. Hearts are being prepared. Circumstances are being positioned. And you don't have to manage any of it. Your only responsibility is obedience in the present, to remain faithful where you are, to continue growing where God has planted you, to keep your heart open but guarded. This balance is delicate, and God is teaching you how to maintain it. Open enough to love, guarded enough to stay wise, hopeful enough to believe, grounded enough not to assume. This is emotional maturity guided by faith. You are no longer driven by fear of missing out. You are no longer worried that waiting will cost you something. You trust that whatever is meant for you cannot bypass God's timing, and that trust is freeing. It frees you from comparison. It frees you from anxiety. It frees you from forcing outcomes. You are content to let God unfold things as He sees fit. That contentment is not complacency. It is confidence in God's sovereignty. Someone is thinking about you, but they are also being tested in their patience. God is observing how they handle He waiting too. Whether they honor boundaries, whether they respect God's timing, whether they value obedience over desire. Because alignment is mutual. God does not mature one heart while leaving the other unchanged. He works on both sides. And when both are ready, movement will feel natural, not forced. Until then, silence continues. Not as absence, but as incubation. Incubation is quiet by design. Growth happens unseen. Transformation takes place without announcement. And when life finally emerges, it is strong enough to survive outside the hidden place. This is what God is doing now. You may feel like nothing is happening, but in reality, something significant is forming. And it is forming correctly. That matters more than speed. Fast things impress people. Correct things honor God. And God is not interested in impressing anyone. He is interested in establishing something that reflects His nature. Steady, faithful, intentional, secure. That is what He is building in you. And one day, when the time is right, you will look back at this season and realize that the quiet was necessary. The waiting was purposeful. The silence was protective. You will see how every unanswered question kept you grounded. How every delayed moment strengthened your faith. How every pause saved you from premature attachment. And you will be grateful that God loved you enough to slow you down. For now, remain where you are, present, peaceful, prayerful. Let God continue His work without interruption. Let Him finish what He started in you. Because what He is preparing you for requires everything He is doing now and He does not waste time. And because God does not waste time, LSO does not waste seasons. Even the ones that feel repetitive, even the ones that feel uneventful, even the ones where days blur together and nothing dramatic seems to happen. Those seasons are often the most formative because they teach you consistency without reward, faith without evidence, obedience without applause. You are learning how to walk with God when there is no emotional rush attached to it, how to pray when prayer feels ordinary, how to trust when trust feels routine. That kind of faith is not built in crisis alone. It is built in quiet obedience, and quiet obedience is powerful. It means you are no longer motivated only by outcomes. You are motivated by relationship. You are learning to love God for who He is, not just for what He does, and that shift changes everything, because when God knows He has your heart, He can trust you with His blessings. That includes people. God is very careful about who He allows access to you because He understands the weight you carry, not just emotionally but spiritually. You are not just living for yourself anymore. You are living with purpose, whether you fully recognize it or not, and purpose attracts responsibility. So God slows things down. He wants to make sure you don't confuse attention with assignment, that you don't interpret interest as instruction, that you don't step into something prematurely and later wonder why it feels heavy. He wants what He gives you to feel aligned, not draining. And alignment feels peaceful even when it stretches you. This is why you are not restless. Curious, yes. Aware, yes. But not desperate, not anxious, not spiraling. That emotional stability is a sign of growth. God has strengthened your inner life enough to handle awareness without obsession. There was a time when knowing someone was thinking about you would have consumed you. You would have replayed every interaction, analyzed every word, searched for confirmation in every sign. But now, you can acknowledge the awareness and still sleep at night. That is maturity. And maturity is attractive to God, because mature people can steward revelation without misusing it. They don't weaponize information. They don't rush God's process. They don't build expectations where God only intended preparation. They wait. And waiting does not mean doing nothing. It means continuing to live fully in obedience while trusting God to handle what you cannot control. You are still showing up for your calling, still growing, still learning, still becoming. You are not putting your life on hold for a possibility, and that is exactly how it should be. God does not pause your purpose while He prepares a connection. He weaves them together, and He is doing that now. You may not see it, but your growth is affecting the other person as well. God often uses distance to develop respect, uses silence to deepen intention, uses waiting to remove selfish motives. This is why nothing feels rushed. God is stripping away anything that would cheapen what He is building, anything rooted in insecurity, fear, or ego. He is making sure that when movement happens, it is led by conviction, not impulse. That takes time. And in that time, you are learning something else. How to be comfortable not knowing everything. How to trust God's leadership without needing daily updates. How to walk by faith without demand. Invisibility. That kind of trust is rare. Most people want certainty before obedience. God is teaching you obedience before certainty. And that is the kind of faith He honors. Because faith that waits on God's word instead of chasing its own understanding is faith that can be trusted with more clarity, more responsibility, more influence, and yes, more connection. But God gives more only when more won't become a distraction. You are no longer distracted by what you don't have. You are present with what God is doing now, and that presence keeps you grounded. This season is stabilizing you. You are developing discernment that cannot be shaken by emotions alone. You are learning to separate spiritual confirmation from emotional excitement. You're becoming someone who can feel deeply without losing clarity. That balance is powerful, because deep feeling without discernment leads to pain, and discernment without feeling leads to isolation. God is teaching you how to carry both. This is why He hasn't rushed things. Someone is thinking about you. But God is more concerned with how you think about Him, whether you trust Him when things are unclear, whether you remain faithful when answers are delayed, whether you keep your heart soft without letting it become vulnerable to harm, and you are doing well. Even on days when you feel unsure, even on days when you wonder if you imagined it, even on days when silence feels longer than expected, you are still choosing faith. That choice matters. God sees every moment you choose not to overthink, every time you choose prayer over speculation, every time you choose peace over pressure. Those choices are shaping you, our future. Because the future God is preparing for you will require emotional intelligence, spiritual maturity, and unwavering trust. He is not just preparing you for a person. He is preparing you for a season where your decisions will carry more weight, your influence will reach further, and your obedience will matter more than ever. So He slows you down now. He anchors you now. He teaches you how to wait well. Waiting well means you don't complain in silence. You don't build narratives without evidence. You don't grow bitter while hoping for good things. You remain teachable, flexible, humble, and humility attracts grace. Grace to wait, grace to trust, grace to remain steady. You are walking in that grace, and as long as you remain surrendered, God will continue to lead you clearly, step by step, moment by moment, without confusion. Because God is not the author of confusion. And what He is writing in your life now is orderly, intentional, and deeply personal. This is not random. This is preparation in motion. So let this truth settle gently but firmly in your heart. Nothing about this season is accidental, and nothing about you has been overlooked. What God confirmed was not meant to stir impatience, but to anchor trust. What remains hidden is not being withheld, it is being protected. You are not waiting in uncertainty, you are standing in alignment. And alignment always precedes manifestation. Stay where God has placed you. Guard your peace. Keep your heart open to Him above all else. When the moment comes, and it will come, it will arrive without strain, without confusion, without fear. It will feel steady, clean, and unmistakably God. Until then, rest in this assurance. Heaven is working even when life feels quiet. And the same God who allowed you to know is the God who knows exactly when to reveal.